We have Richard Stengel coming in, and he's going to be replacing you in the next administration, if that's a Biden administration, correct?
He is the head of the transition team into my agency. He's rumored to be Biden's candidate to replace me. I've never met him. I mean, in keeping with the Washington Post's refusal to cover my agency fairly, there was a piece today in the Post saying that we have refused to cooperate with the transition team, even though I'm scheduled to talk to Mr. Stengel next week, and we've provided hundreds of pages of documents and many, many interviews. But I have not talked to him yet, so the transition team is working away.
Well, he is the former editor at Time magazine. He served as Obama's undersecretary for state for public diplomacy and public affairs. But what I want to really talk to you about is his view on the First Amendment, because I don't think the First Amendment is what he thinks it is.
Well, he definitely has these controversial views on the First Amendment, and I don't understand them. Our agency especially should be committed to the First Amendment. In fact, what we should be communicating is the fundamental principles enshrined in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. Those are the things that make America unique, and we need to get those ideas out in the world to combat what the Chinese are saying, what radical Islam is saying, and we need to be defending things like the First Amendment on which we rely. So I think that's very important.
He has said, as a government official traveling around the world championing the virtues of free speech, I came to see how our First Amendment standard is an outlier. Damn right. He wrote, right. Even the most sophisticated Arab diplomats that I dealt with did not understand why the First Amendment allows someone to burn a Koran. Amen. Yes. Oh, the most sophisticated Arab diplomat. We should be defending instead. He's a guy who is saying we need hate speech laws, that our First Amendment goes too far. Let me play the journalist, please, the head of the journalism school of Columbia University. Listen to what he said about Facebook and free speech.
You can't get away from the fact that their mission is to connect everybody in the world. That's what motivates Mark Zuckerberg, and it's his passion, and he profoundly believes in free speech. And, those of us in journalism have to come to terms with the fact that free speech, a principle that we hold sacred, is being weaponized against the principles of journalism. And what do we do about that? I just say, as reporters, we kind of march into this war with our facts nobly shouldered as if they were going to win the day. And what we're seeing is that because of the scale of this alternate reality that you've been talking about, our facts, our principles, our scientific method, it isn't enough.
Unbelievable. How do you fight against that, Michael? What can you put in place, or what have you put into place, if anything, that can slow this march away from the First Amendment?
Well, I have tried to put things in place in these institutions so that they remain true to their actually fundamentally core mission, which is to tell the objective truth, to promote American ideas, and to represent the administration's views along with criticism. And we have tried to put in new policies. We've cleaned up a huge security failure. There was, owing to this sort of mismanagement over a 10-year period, we had reports from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence and the Office of Personnel Management that 1,500 of our 4,000 people had not had proper security clearances, including 77 with confidential and above. And our agency had been filing security forms without taking fingerprints, with making up social security numbers. After our right to clear people had been revoked, we continue to clear people. So I've fixed this massive security problem, and I've tried to investigate those responsible for it. And that, too, is perceived as a kind of witch hunt on the part of the Trump administration. But this is a huge security failure, and that, I think, is on the way to being fixed and cannot be reversed.
That's good news.
And it's very, very important that these agencies be have their security, not lax and not be subject to, the influence by foreign intelligence or any other kind of bad action. And, these security rules are in place for a reason. And in a way, that may seem unrelated to bias, but I think this kind of gross mismanagement, lack of concern about security is related to a lack of concern about bias and a kind of laissez-faire attitude towards things like bias in the Urdu video and just not reporting both sides. I mean, another example of that is that in the presidential election, there was no mention of the Hunter Biden story, let alone the effort of Twitter to cover it up. And whatever you think, if you're Democrat or Republican, it's an important Republican story. And when you're supposed to represent all of America, it's an important story to be there. I've only been there 6 months. I'm trying to put institutions in place, but I actually fear, Glenn, that everything that we've done will be potentially reversed by a new group that might come in.
And how much damage, what does that mean for America?
Well, I mean, we need to tell our story. And the American people spend close to $1 billion, over $800 million on these agencies. And it's important. And we need to win the war of ideas. You understand this better as well as anybody else. And this is an instrument of it. I actually think, Glenn, that it's symptomatic of a bigger problem. And it's very hard to get the VOA and these other institutions to be unbiased and objective and balanced when the rest of the media isn't. They look to the Washington Post and the New York Times and CNN as their models. And it's very hard to get them to see it the way the law says it should be. And that is really a problem. And I actually think the failure to tell America's stories goes well beyond just my agency. We as a culture are not doing it. Hollywood is not doing it. The Academy is not doing it.
Nobody is.
So it's symptomatic of a deeper problem that is very hard to fix. But I am planning to dedicate myself to fixing it. We need to build institutions, in addition to this U.S. government one, that'll tell America's story to the world. I mean, you mentioned my Clarence Thomas film. I think that's the kind of story the world needs to hear. It's a story of a man who could succeed in America where he could not have succeeded anywhere else, from dire poverty in the segregated South to the Supreme Court. I mean, and it's called Created Equal because of Clarence Thomas's dedication to the Declaration and the Constitution. I mean, there are many such stories, and they're not getting out. Instead, people all over the world are hearing stories of racism and oppression and imperialism, and it's not an America that I recognize.
So, Michael, when you leave there, make sure you give me a call, because I'd like to help you in any way that we can, because we need to tell America's stories, and we all need to come together and work together, or we are just toast standing as individuals. Thank you so much, Michael. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. We will be in touch. Thank you, Glenn.